Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, Chapter 4. So, on the first page of our chapter, think about after a year of marriage, what is Janie and Killicks' relationship like? Let's take a look. Long before the year was up, Janie noticed that her husband had stopped talking in rhymes to her. He had ceased to wonder at her long black hair and finger it. 6 months back he had told her, "If I can haul the wood heap and chop it for you, look like you ought to be able to tote it inside. My first wife never bothered me about chipping no wood now how. She'd grab that axe and sling chips like a man. You've been spoiled rotten." So Janie had told him, "I'm just as stiff as you is stout. If you can stand not to chop and tote wood, I reckon you can stand not to get no dinner. Excuse my frivolity, Mr. Killicks, but I don't mean to chop the first chip." "Ah, you know I'm going to chop the wood for you, even if you as stingy as you can be with me. Your grandma and me myself done spoilt you now, and I reckon I have to keep on with it." One morning, soon, he called her out of the kitchen to the barn. He had the mule all saddled at the gate. "Looky here, little bit. Help me out some. Cut up these seed taters for me. I gotta go step off a piece." "Where you going?" "Over to Lake City to see a man about a mule." "What you need 2 mules for?" "Listen, you aim to swap off this one?" So, after a year of marriage, what is Janie and Killicks' relationship like? So, Killicks has become less sweet and wants Janie to do more work. He wants her to chop wood and help take care of all the land. But Janie refuses to do tasks like chopping wood. She essentially tells Killicks that if he's not going to chop wood for her, she won't cook dinner for him. And Killicks gives in really easily. He blames himself and Nanny for spoiling Janie and essentially says that he knows he's going to essentially have to keep spoiling her because she doesn't know any better. So let's see how this works out for them. "Nah, I needs 2 mules this year. Taters is going to be taters in the fall, bringing big prices. I aims to run 2 plows, and this man I'm talking about is got a mule all gentled up so even a woman can handle him." Logan held his wad of tobacco real still in his jaw like a thermometer of his feelings while he studied Janie's face and waited for her to say something. "So I thought I might as well go see." He tagged on and swallowed to kill time, but Janie said nothing except, "I'll cut the taters for you. When you coming back?" "Don't know exactly. Round dusk dark, I reckon. It's a sort of long trip, especially after lead one of the way back." When Janie had finished indoors, she sat down in the barn with the potatoes, but springtime reached her in there, so she moved everything to a place in the yard where she could see the road. The noon sun filtered through the leaves of the fine oak tree where she sat and made lacy patterns on the ground. She had been there a long time when she heard whistling coming down the road. It was a citified, stylish-dressed man, with his hat set at an angle that didn't belong in these parts. His coat was over his arm, but he didn't need it to represent his clothes. The shirt with the silk sleeve holders was dazzling enough for the world. He whistled, mopped his face, and walked like he knew where he was going. He was seal brown color, but he acted like Mr. Washburn or somebody like that to Janie. Where would such a man be coming from, and where was he going? He didn't look her way, nor no other way except straight ahead. So Janie ran to the pump and jerked the handle hard while she pumped. It made a loud noise and also made her heavy hair fall down. So this new character that Janie's just about to meet is going to be named Joe Starks. So this is Joe Starks. So let's continue reading and see the circumstances in which Janie and Joe meet. So he stopped and looked hard, and then he asked her for a cool drink of water. Janie pumped it off until she got a good look at the man. She talked friendly while he drank. Joe Starks was the name. Yeah, Joe Starks from in and through Georgie. Been working for white folks all his life. Saved up some money, around $300, yes indeed, right here in his pocket. Kept hearing about them building a new state down here in Florida, and sort of wanted to come. But he was making money where he was. But when he heard all about him making a town all out of colored folks, he knew that was the place he wanted to be. He had always wanted to be a big voice, but the white folks had all the say-so where he came from, and everywhere else, except this place that colored folks was building themselves. That was right, too. The man that built things ought to boss it. Let colored folks build things, too, if they want to crow over something. He was glad he had his money all saved up. He meant to get there whilst the town was yet a baby. He meant to buy him big. It had always been his wish and desire to be a big voice, and he had to live nearly 30 years to find a chance. Where was Janie's mama and papa? They dead, I reckon. I wouldn't know about 'em 'cause my grandma raised me. She dead too. She dead too? Well, who's looking after a little girl chilly like you? I'm married. You married? You ain't hardly old enough to be weaned. I bet you still crave sugar tits, don't you? So, who is Joe Starks? So, we've met Joe Starks, and he's a wealthy, confident 30-year-old man. And he's come to Florida to find the first black town, which is called Eatonville, because he's tired for working for white men. And we can tell he has a lot of ambition. And so this place, Eatonville, is a real place in Florida, and we'll talk more about it later. But Eatonville is actually the location where our author, Zora Neale Hurston, lived. And so it's a real location one she's very familiar with. While this is by no means autobiography, Zora Neale Hurston definitely is writing about the things she knows. She's writing about people who she's familiar with. She's writing about places that she's familiar with. And so she's telling her own story, even if it's not a true story. It's inspired by the things that she knew. All right, so let's keep reading. Yeah, and I makes them suck 'em when the notion does strike me. Drink sweetened water, too. I loves that myself. Never expect to get too old to enjoy syrup sweetened water when it's cool and nice. Us got plenty of syrup in the barn, ribbon cane syrup, if you so desire. Where your husband at, Miss, my name is Janie Mae Killicks since I got married. Used to be named Janie Mae Crawford. My husband has gone to buy a mule for me to plow. He left me cutting up sea potatoes. You behind a plow? You ain't got no more business with a plow than us hog got with a holiday. You ain't got no business cutting up no sea potatoes neither. A pretty doll baby like you is meant to sit on a front porch and rock and fan yourself and eat potatoes that other folks plant just special for you. Janie laughed and drew 2 quarts of syrup from the barrel, and Joe Starks pumped the water bucket full of cool water. They sat under the tree and talked. He was going down to the new part of Florida, but no harm to stop and chat. He later decided he needed a rest anyway. It would do him good to rest a week or two. Every day after that, they managed to meet in the scrub oaks across the road and talk about when he would be a big ruler of things with her reaping the benefits. Janie pulled back a long time because he did not represent sunup and pollen and blooming trees, but he spoke for far horizon. He spoke for change and chance. Still, she hung back. The memory of Nanny was still powerful and strong. So let's pause here and talk about this new character, Joe Stark, that Janie has met. So here we have Joe Stark, and Janie's interested in the things that he has to tell her. We can tell it because she finds a way to meet with him every day for 2 weeks. But she points out the fact that Joe Stark does not represent, as she says, the sunup and pollen and blooming trees. So this fantasy of love and romance and marriage that Janie had when she was 16 years old and looking at the pear tree is not what Joe Stark represents, and she knows that. But she does say that Joe Stark talks about far horizons, and so that reference goes back to the beginning of the novel, where we talk about the life of men and the horizon and the ship sailing on it. And she can tell that Joe Starks has a dream and ambitious that he's focused on and he's going to go after until he achieves it. And this excites her. This is much more exciting to her than 60-year-old Killicks. But she's not quite sure if she wants to kind of like go away, run off with Joe Starks. And that's because she remembers what her grandma told her. So remember, her grandma is the old tree she's grown and wise, and Janie's still a new tree growing. And so the warnings that her nanny gave her about how like men could try to take advantage of her because she's young and beautiful, she remembers that, and so she waits. She just doesn't run off with Joe Stark. She's still trying to think about what the right decision is. So let's see what she does. So Joe Stark says, Janie, if you think I aims to toll you off and make a dog out of you, you's wrong. I want to make a wife out of you. You mean that, Joe? The days you put your hand in mine, I wouldn't let the sun go down on us a single. I'm a man with principles. You ain't never known what it was to be treated like a lady, and I wants to be the one to show you. Call me Jody, like you do sometimes. So keep that in mind, don't get confused. Joe and Jody, same person. Jody, she smiled up at him. But supposin', leave the supposin' and everything else to me. I'll be down this road a little after sunup tomorrow morning to wait for you. You come and go with me. Then all the rest of your natural life you can live like you oughta. Kiss me and shake your head. When you do that, your plentiful hair breaks like day. Janie debated the matter that night in bed. So what does Jody want? Let's talk about that before we continue with Janie figuring out what she's going to do. So Jody wants to marry Janie, but Janie doesn't know what she should do. So she's going to go and talk it over with Killicks. So that's what we're about to read. Janie's going to confront Logan Killicks about the fact that she might run off. Janie debated the matter that night in bed. Logan, you sleep? If I was, you done woke me up calling me. I was thinking real hard about us, about you and me. It's about time. You's powerful independent around here something considering. Considering what, for instance? Considering you's born in a carriage without no top on it, and your mama and you being born and raised in the white folks' backyard. You didn't say all that 'cause you was begging Nanny for me to marry you. I thought you'd appreciate some good treatment. Thought I'd take and make something out of you. You think you's white folk by the way you act. Supposing I was to run off and leave you sometime. There, Janie had put words in his held-in fears. She might run off sure enough. The thought put a terrible ache in Logan's body, but he thought it was best to put on scorn. I'm getting sleepy, Janie. Let's don't talk about no more. Tain't too many men would trust ya, knowing your folks like they do. I might take and find somebody that did trust me and leave ya. Shucks, tain't no more fools like me. A whole lot of men will grin in your face, but they ain't gonna work and feed ya. You won't get far, and you won't be long. When that big gut reach over and grab that little one, you'll be too glad to come back here. You don't take nothing to count but sow belly and cornbread. I'm sleepy. I don't want to worry my gut into a fiddle string with no boys, supposin'. He flopped over, resentful in his agony, and pretended to sleep. He hoped that he had hurt her as much as she had hurt him. So how does Logan react when Janie threatens to leave him? So it hurts him, but he hides the pain. So when Janie says she might leave, it says that Logan felt a terrible ache in his body. But instead of kind of showing this pain, he kind of protects himself and he acts scornful and tells her that she won't make it far, that if she runs off, she's just going to find trouble and she'll come on back. And at the end, it says he hoped that he had hurt her as much as she had hurt him. And so, I don't know about you, but in this moment, I feel a little bad for Logan, where he wants to have a wife and he wants her to love him, but she just doesn't. And it hurts the things that she says to him. All right, so let's see what happens next. Janie got up with him the next morning and had the breakfast halfway done when he bellowed from the barn. Janie, Logan called harshly, come help me move this manure pile before the sun gets hot. You don't take a bit of interest in this place. There ain't no use in fooling around in that kitchen all day long. Janie walked to the door with the pan in her hand, still stirring the cornmeal dough, and looked towards the barn. The sun from ambush was threatening the world with red daggers, but the shadows were gray and solid looking around the barn. Logan with his shovel looked like a black bear doing some clumsy dance on his hind legs. You don't need my help out there, Logan. You's in your place and I'm in mine. You ain't got no particular place. It's wherever I need you. Get a move on, you, and that quick. My mama didn't tell me I was born in no hurry, so what business I got rushing now? Anyhow, that ain't what you's mad about. You mad 'cause I don't fall down and wash up these 60 acres of ground you got. You ain't done no favor by marrying me, and if that's what you call yourself doing, I don't thank you for it. You's mad 'cause I'm telling you what you already know. Logan dropped his shovel and made 2 or 3 clumsy steps towards the house, then stopped abruptly. And I am going to stop abruptly here because I'm almost out of time. So hop over to part 2 of the chapter 4 videos, and we will finish up because we're almost done with this chapter. See you in a minute.